Hey everybody, by the end of this video, you're going to know one way of getting a container up and running in Proxmox VE using Proxmox Helper Scripts. Let's get started. The first thing we need to do to get started is go to the Proxmox VE Helper Scripts website, which you'll see on your screen now. The address is ttech.github.io and you'll find that down in the description. Once you're there, move down to the Monitoring and Analytics category and click on that to open it. Click on MySpeed LXC, scroll down just a little bit, and click copy. This will grab the text that's displayed. Now, you can also manually select with your mouse the script here. Just watch out and make sure that you select the whole thing. If you miss parts of it, you will have problems later on. Using the resources at Proxmox Helper Scripts is without a doubt one of the easiest ways to get moving forward with Proxmox VE. Whether you're new to Proxmox or you just want to experiment with containers instead of virtual machines, this is a great resource to get you started. But we can't stop here. We need to actually go run this script on the server. Here we are on one of my Proxmox machines. We're going to make sure that the Proxmox host is selected. You can see here mine is PVE03. We're going to go over to the right side and select shell, and we're going to paste in the script that we copied. Now, I'll warn you, this is going to take a few minutes. This particular machine is not the fastest machine that I've got running Proxmox at the moment, but it's a good demo machine, and it gives an idea for how fast or slow one of these scripts might run. So once we've got this pasted in, we're going to go ahead and hit enter. And when prompted here, we are going to hit enter for yes. And for this particular walkthrough, we are going to use the default settings. Now, you can choose to go through the advanced settings. And if you have a little bit of a background in networking and understand some basic things, that might be a good option for you. But if you are brand new to Linux containers, selecting the default settings will allow you to get started and have a working result on the other side. Choosing the advanced settings may result in something not working quite right and leaving you frustrated with spending the time and having nothing really to show for it. So let's use the default settings. While we're waiting for the install to finish, let's jump back to the Proxmox Helper Scripts site for a moment. There are some really useful options available here that are just as easy to run as the MySpeed script. A few of my favorites are Home Assistant, Uptime Kuma, PyAlert, Jellyfin Media Server, Sterling PDF, and Dashi. These are all containers I have installed using the Proxmox Helper Scripts. There are many more that I have yet to try. For instance, under Proxmox VE Tools, we've got things like Proxmox VE Post Install. This is great for turning off the subscription nag screen and a few other odds and ends that new users to Proxmox VE may not know about. And you can either do them manually by consulting YouTube videos and blog posts, or you can just run this script and have it done for you very quickly. Under the Home Assistant category, we've got several different ways to install Home Assistant, automation, message queuing. Again, this is related to home automation and different things. Many times a programmer would use something like this. There are databases, Zigbee, Z-Wave, and Matter. Again, this is related to home automation. Monitoring and analytics. We've got our MySpeed container. We've also got things like change detection and Uptime Kuma, which is one of my personal favorites. So if you're new to Proxmox, spend some time going through the scripts over here at the Proxmox VE Helper Scripts site, I wish I had found this site a whole lot earlier in my Proxmox journey. Let's get back to the video. All right, now that the initial installation is finished, we can follow the instructions on screen and navigate to the URL that is displayed. We'll open that up in a new tab, and immediately we are prompted. We'll continue. We're going to use the default provider of Ookla. If you have a preference of one of the others, go ahead and select that now. It can be changed later. And click continue. We can leave these at the defaults for the optimal data. Again, it can be changed later. Continue. And by continuing past this screen, you are accepting the terms of service. If you feel so inclined, you can click on the links and read those before you go on. And we're going to say done. So this is the second phase of the installation and probably one of the easiest. You're just clicking the button to continue through, and there are no real pitfalls to avoid at this stage. Now that we've completed the setup, we can move on to some configuration and actually run our first test. So we're going to click the speedometer in the top right of the screen, start speed test, and it's going to do its thing. Doing this now will establish a baseline to compare to later on. Now, until you have about 10 tests run, you don't really have sufficient information to observe any real patterns, and you may want to have this run for a few days before trying to pick a pattern out of the data that you're presented with. Now that we've got MySpeed installed and we've run our first speed test, it's time to take a look at the documentation and to plan a little bit of what settings we may want to change in the future. Let's take a look. From the gear icon in the top right, click About This Project, and the link for MySpeed will take you to their main website. Up here in the top right, you can click on Documentation, and it will open this up, and you can read through how this works and get an idea of other configuration options that are worth knowing about, and problems that you may run into might actually have an answer in this documentation. So why is it important to look through the documentation now? You just installed something, and of course you've got this urge to just play with it and experiment and you know, learn by doing, right? Well, at least knowing where the documentation is and having some idea of the contents will help you later if a problem arises, because you won't be panicked. You'll be able to go in and a little bit more calmly go to the sections you need to go to and try to figure out what your problem is. Don't be that guy or gal that waits until there's a problem to go review the documentation. All right, we're off to the races now. You can sit back for a few days and let MySpeed run its tests in the background and come back and be able to review some data and just see how well your internet is performing or perhaps not performing. Keep in mind that since this is not the official test of your ISP, it is not going to keep you from having to run their test if you should get into a situation where you need to call tech support. All the internet providers I've ever dealt with have relied on their own tests as the quote-unquote source of truth when trying to diagnose an issue. But while we're here, let's take a look at another instance of MySpeed that I've got running, and you can see that I've had this running for a few days. Now, this is showing today's date, and there's one setting that I want to point out to you. Once you have enough data, it doesn't make any sense at the beginning, but once you have enough data, you can change the set period option. And you can have it show the last 7 days in an average. You can have it show up to 30 days, you can have it show 2 days total, or 24 hours, which is your default. Again, the default is a good place to start because at the beginning, you're not going to have enough data to select one of the other options. Let's move it back to the 2-day total here, and we'll say update. And we'll just refresh this. And so it changes from having the dates listed on the left side to having the time. This particular MySpeed instance, I've got set to run a speed test every 30 minutes. Yes, this may be overkill, but my goal here was to have some data prepared for the making of this video. From that side of things, I will say mission accomplished. That's all there is to getting started with MySpeed as a Linux container on Proxmox VE. There are other ways you can run MySpeed, and you can go over to the documentation and find out more about those ways if one of those is better suited for your environment. If you've been around computers for any length of time, you know that there are usually at least 3 and usually many more ways to get a single task done. This is just one of them.